Hello, my name is Dani. I'm an art instructor, and you're tuned in to the Able Artswork Virtual Learning channel. Thanks for joining me today. Today, I'm going to show you how to use your watercolors to make some colorful pine trees. Whenever I think of winter, I think of pine tree motifs, and I thought with all these different holidays coming up, we could use our colors in a really fun way. However, if you want to paint some traditional pine trees, you can follow along with the same brush techniques just using your green paints. So for this activity, you'll need a paintbrush, watercolor paper, a cup of water, and your watercolors. So grab your materials and we can get started. So we can start with any color that we want for our first tree. I think that I will go with a purple and red tree. So I am going to dip my paintbrush into my water, then into my purple paint first. Now there are a lot of different ways to draw pine trees. You can draw a big triangle if you want, but the way that I'm going to do it is to start at the top of the tree and slope my paintbrush downwards off to the left and the right. And we're going to make a few different tiers so we can really see the pine needles flaring out down the tree. So I'm going to get some more paint on my brush here. If you want it to be a multicolored tree like I'm doing, I'm mixing some red and purple onto my brush by dipping my paintbrush in both, adding some water, and proceeding down to the next tier. You can see as we start changing the paint how the colors can spread throughout the shape, and it'll get a really nice effect when it dries. So for that last tier, I will just be putting red on my brush. So for the trunk, I'm also going to make it a different color. I think if I want to make them as colorful as possible, I can have the trunk of each tree be a different color than the pine needles. So I'm going to go ahead, add some yellow to my brush. You could pick a different color. And I'm just adding a rectangle that flares a little bit out at the bottom for the tree trunk. The colors here are starting to bleed through. That's totally okay. That's the nature of watercolors, and they will dry with a really neat texture. So let's do another tree together. I'm going to pick a different color this time. I think I could make this next one be a green and blue tree. So I'm going to dip my paintbrush into my water, then I'm going to pick one of the greens I have available. And again, we will be doing 3 different tiers and adding different colors to our paintbrush as we go along. So I'm starting at the top of the tree, sloping my brush down to the left and the right. Again, this technique works just the same if you only want to be using green for your trees, and the brush strokes will still come out just as interesting as if you use lots of colors. So I am adding more green to my brush, mixing it with another type of green I have here to make the next tier. It's a bit of a bluish green, so these colors will play really nicely together. I think for the bottom part of the tree, I will add an even darker bluish green. While the watercolors are wet, you can always add more layers and see how that changes the texture and the gradient throughout the shape that you are painting. So again, I'm going to pick a tree trunk that is a different color than the pine needles. So maybe for this one, I will give it a purple trunk. Feel free to pick any color that you think jumps out to you and would make a cool color palette. I think I would want to have a full rainbow palette on this page, so I'm gonna look and see what I haven't used much of yet. I think that I haven't used blue or orange, so I think that my last tree can use those colors. So I'm going to make the pine needles blue. Maybe I'll give it an orange trunk. So I am just adding some blue to my brush here, adding some water, and again, starting at the top of the tree, sloping off to the sides. That is the first tier of our tree done. I'm going to add different blues that I have next. But if you only have one blue available in your watercolor palette, you can always mix it with some purple or some green and switch up the amount of color that make up the combinations. And then you can end up with a much more varied palette than you would think at the start. So next I'm going into this dark purpley blue. You could just put purple on your brush if you like. Just trying to play with having these colors blending out, bleeding into each other. Lastly, I will add an orange trunk to the base of this tree. Great! Now you could either hang this on your wall, send it to your friend in the mail to help them get into the holiday spirit. I hope you enjoyed painting with me. I hope you chose colors that you enjoyed. Check out the other videos on our channel about art, language, and music.